So, let's get into the story of how one show completely changed television forever. It's this incredible tale of data, big ambitions, and a really spectacular collapse that redefined not just how we watch TV, but what we watch. I mean, imagine that. This was the exact question that kicked off one of the biggest gambles in entertainment history. Netflix wasn't just, throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. They wanted a sure thing in a business that's famous for being unpredictable. But this wasn't just some lucky bet. Oh no, it was a totally calculated plan. This is the story of how a company that used to be known for mailing you DVDs decided it was going to reverse engineer a hit show. You have to remember, back then, the idea of a streaming service making its own prestige show, it was almost laughable. Streaming was where you went to catch up on reruns, not find the next big, groundbreaking series. But Netflix? Well, they had a plan to crash that very exclusive party. Here's the brilliant part. Netflix didn't have to guess. They had the data. They could see that the people who loved the original British series also happened to love director David Fincher, and they also loved actor Kevin Spacey. It was like this perfect Venn diagram. It wasn't just a creative hunch, it was a formula, a recipe for a show that was pretty much guaranteed to work. $100 million. That is a staggering amount of money. And that's what Netflix committed for 2 full seasons, 26 episodes, without ever even seeing a pilot episode. A move so bold, so unheard of, that it let them outbid giants like HBO and AMC. It was a signal that a new player was on the field, and they were rewriting all the rules. Okay, so making the show was revolutionary enough, but it was the release strategy that truly changed everything. It transformed not just the industry, but our own habits as viewers. Now, this was a huge deal. No one had ever done this on such a major scale. Up until that point, television was this weekly appointment you had to keep. But Netflix decided to just throw that whole convention out the window, and in doing so, they gave us a whole new word for our vocabulary. All of a sudden, you weren't tied to a network's schedule anymore. You had all the control. The whole water cooler conversation, which used to be all about last night's episode, was changed forever. Now you could burn through a whole season in a weekend. It was a completely new way to experience a story. And the show's whole aesthetic was just as deliberate. It didn't look like your typical TV show. It had this desaturated, very cinematic look that just felt, well, premium. This moody, controlled visual style made it feel less like a TV show and more like you were watching a 13-hour movie. And of course, the show was an immediate smash hit. But those Emmy nominations, that was the real turning point. For the first time ever, a streaming show wasn't just competing with cable. It was being seen as its equal. This proved that streaming wasn't some far-off future of television, it was the present. But just like that political empire Frank Underwood built in the show, the real-world production was, well, it was a house of cards. It was built on some pretty shaky ground and was maybe always destined to fall apart in the most dramatic way possible. Think about it. The thrill of the chase, watching Frank's ruthless climb to power, was gone. Once he actually made it to the presidency, the story just kind of lost its way. By season 4, you had these bizarre plot lines, like an assassination attempt and these weird coma-induced dream sequences. The show that was once a super sharp political thriller was, well, it was getting lost. And then the real world crashed the party. In October 2017, multiple allegations of sexual misconduct came out against the show's star, Kevin Spacey, and everything just ground to a halt. The show's collapse was incredibly swift and decisive. With its main character and executive producer just gone, Netflix and the production company were backed into an impossible corner. How do you finish a story when its central pillar has been completely removed? The final season, which they had to rewrite on the fly to focus on Robin Wright's character, Claire Underwood, got a really divided reaction. And you can see it right here in the scores. A lot of critics gave it a kind of mixed but respectable score, like, hey, they did the best they could. But audiences, they pretty much rejected it. That huge gap shows you just how much the off-screen drama really affected the viewer experience. This was the impossible question that defined the show's chaotic and really divisive final chapter. The writers tried to make it work, and it all led to this shocking finale, where Claire Underwood murders Frank's loyal right-hand man, Doug Stamper, right there in the Oval Office. It was just a brutal end to a series that had completely lost its center. But here's the thing. Despite that messy, super controversial end, the legacy of House of Cards is absolutely undeniable. Its impact on the entertainment industry is something we are all still feeling today. You can really break the show's legacy down into three revolutionary steps. First, it proved streaming could be premium. Second, it made binge watching a normal thing. And third, it kicked off the giant content arms race. This wasn't just a hit show, it was a total paradigm shift that reshaped everything. And I mean, just look at the data. The numbers speak for themselves. In 2010, there were only 4 original streaming series. By 2017, there were over 100. House of Cards didn't just open the door, it blew the floodgates wide open. It lit the fuse on the content explosion we're still seeing today. So, you have a show that began as this perfect, data-driven equation, and it ended in a storm of human turmoil and controversy. It really makes you wonder about the true cost of rewriting the rules and whether a house built on such a revolutionary but ultimately fragile foundation was ever really meant to last.